there's one subject that we have to broach.
Okay.
And that is I guess I want to talk about the making of the Antenna documentary, of course, but I also want to know what's up with it now, because I know people still want to see it. I'm sure people still ask you all the time, when are we going to be able to buy it on Blu-ray, DVD, whatever?
More than anything, you don't even understand.
So let's talk about it.
Well, after I got laid off from the magazine I told you about when I was a freelancer, I had said for a long time that there were 3 movies about Memphis that needed to be made that had not been made. And one of them was the sanitation workers strike movie of 68, which there was At the River I Stand and all that stuff. But I mean, like a fictionalized account of that, which Greg Brewer wrote. It's a movie called 4-4 that he tried to sell forever. And the other one was The Big Star Story, which was ended up being with Nothing Can Hurt Me is the name of the record.
Yep.
Is that one? And the third one was The Antenna Story. And I got an opportunity with Ross Johnson and this guy named John Floyd, who was a music writer in Memphis and had some money, came to me when I didn't have a job and said, because they had seen my films and wanted to know if I wanted to do this, because Ross had been trying to sell it as a book. And I still want to read the book.
Yeah.
But his literary agent,
Oral History of the Antenna. By Ross Johnson.
Seriously. And
just oral history and Ross in the same.
Yeah.
pretty fun.
And they had so the literary agent was like, they tried to sell his book, and the literary agent was like, you should make a movie because people don't know what this music sounds like. So you want to like let them hear the music.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
a book and CD package would have been tight.
Yeah, book, CD package, like the whole thing, which is, we had that, but whatever.
We digress.
Well, I get ahead of myself. And I said, this is a movie that's been needed to be made for a long time because it's a bit of Memphis music history. Memphis music history, as it's told, stops in 75 when Stax disintegrates. And at that point, the industry either went to Nashville or LA, if you were industry. But the musicians were still here. The industry left. The musicians were still here. The musical traditions were still here. And the scene was still here. And that's kind of what it really split into two at that point, because there was what was going on at the Antenna, which was the punk revolution and the alternative, punk, new wave, and alternative. And then there was what became Memphis rap, too, which started off, I guess, really in the roller derby. Not roller derby, roller boogie stuff.
Yeah.
And then, as hip-hop got here...
Would have been cool if it started in the roller derby.
That would have been cool. Roller boogie. But so I was like, yeah, this is a story that really needs to be told. And the thing about the Antenna was it gave us a set period and a sort of geographical location to work around. And I've always said that the Antenna is a cultural documentary disguised as a music documentary. Really, it's about the people that were there and the evolution of that scene and the way that that interacted with the larger culture over time. The real story of punk rock is not the Sex Pistols, the Clash, and Blondie. It's all 1,000 little bands that happened all over the world when they heard that music and said, I can do that too. That's what punk is valuable. And that's what what the Antenna did ultimately was rebuild this culture of original music that Memphis had in the past. And really, people think of that as a golden age, but I'm sure for a long time, everybody went and played in West Memphis because they wouldn't let people play R&B in Memphis, basically. So a lot of the Stax people would gig in West Memphis and come across the bridge and record all night, but no place there was, and I've always said that the plot of Antenna is simple. There was no place to play. There was a place to play. There was no place to play. what feels like plot movement in that film is you listen to the evolution of the music, and you can hear it. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to do, was select the songs, and so that you could hear how each era influenced the next era. And there was a lot of evolution. Our film goes from January of 1978, when the Sex Pistols played on Union Avenue at the Taliesin Ballroom, which is where the Taco Bell is now. The Sex Pistols Taco Bell. I've been trying to get them to. My big idea is
something of a tourist destination for those who know.
It is. I want to do like a mural. There needs to be a mural on the wall,
or at least one of those marker things that someone would probably steal.
We'll talk about that later. We're going to get to the marker. And then, so they came to me and I said, I would love to do that film because it needs to be told. It's a story that needs to be told. But I'm not going to do a story that's just talking heads with a bunch of middle-aged guys telling everybody how much cooler it was when they were young, because I don't want to watch that movie. And I sure as hell don't want to make it. And I'd hung out at the Antenna from 89 to 95. And I never saw anybody with a camera in there. I never saw anybody with a still camera or a video camera or doing any recording in there. I never saw anybody.
Bob swears that someone videotaped a modifier set in there at one point, but he also swears that the set was then later taped over.
Oh, well, we got some of it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He's right. Yeah.
I mean, he means like a fully produced, like multi-camera crazy thing. I know that you guys had some.
We had a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We ended up with over 100 hours of archival footage, and we did 88 interviews, some of which were 3 hours long. Bob Holmes' interview was 3 hours long with you.
I was in on that.
Yeah, you made that happen, and that made I can't thank you enough for that. That made a big chunk of the movie.
Well, thanks for including Bob. I mean, I recently went to the Pink Palace, or I guess it's called the Museum of Science and History now, but formerly the Pink Palace.
Hey, Pink Palace people, change your freaking name back, okay? It's a stupid idea.
The big sign that says Mosh is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
But anyway.
And fire whoever's idea that was, because they're bad.
There's a little section where they talk about like the roots of Memphis punk rock, and they mention 3 bands, the Clits, the Modifiers, and Panther Burns.
Yeah.
And
I think that's accurate.
And I just wish Bob was alive to see that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when I told him that you wanted to interview him for the documentary, he almost didn't believe it. He has such a low opinion of himself and a low opinion of the Modifiers' legacy that, it took a lot of convincing to even get him out the door.
Oh, yeah. Months. It took us months to get him there.
And
Steve loved him. Steve McGee, the club owner, loved Bob more than anybody, and he was the one that he worked on Bob, both of you guys, until he agreed to be on it. But he's great. That interview was incredible, and I'm so glad that we were able to get that story in there. So we worked on Antenna for about 3 years. Laura and I edited for 18 months, 7 days a week. We took a 4th of July weekend off in the middle of that. That was the only time we took off, while we both had jobs too. I poured myself into that film like I've never poured myself into any other project ever in my life. And I'm extraordinarily proud of how it came out. I really am. And I'm sorry that everybody can't go to Netflix and watch it. That's been the worst thing, one of the worst things that's ever happened to me in my life. It's just hard. It's still hard for me to, I'll tell you, we did the 10th anniversary last year at Indie Memphis. And then before that, before the pandemic, when they did the marker, we had a free screening at Black Lodge. And
I remember.
At the time, it was the biggest event that Black Lodge had ever had. And I felt like, and when I was going to that screening, I told Laura I felt like I was being driven to the gallows. But I got the movie back that night because people cried, and I saw what that movie can do to an audience. And I got the movie back that night because I was really angry and upset and bitter about everything that had happened with the film.
And honestly, I don't even really know like what you're referencing. Like
well,
I mean, I know that you've said to me that part of the reason why the film couldn't be released on DVD or whatever was because of music licensing issues.
Yeah, it's music licensing. So there's a lot more. Well, so here's what's going on with the film. There's 50 songs in the movie. Okay. And we did not have the enough money to pay for the music rights. And John Floyd, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I've been quiet about this long enough in public. John Floyd is one of the producers.
Mm-hmm.
His job was to be, so John Floyd's one of the producers. Ross Johnson's one of the producers. Steve McGee's technically one of the producers as well. His job was basically to get everybody together. Steve still knows everybody. Everybody still loves Steve, most of them. The ones who aren't assholes.
Yeah.
Still love Steve. And he was able to find people and get people together that we would have never been able to find. Bob being one of them, but not the only one.
Yeah.
John Floyd's job was music supervisor. And none of them had ever done these jobs before. But I thought, because I am a self-taught filmmaker, and they were so enthusiastic in the beginning, and they had brought their money into it in the beginning, that I was like, well, I'm self-taught. They can teach themselves to do this. And when we first got together to do it, I was like, we can do this film on the cheap, but music rights are going to eat us up. So we have to be proactive, and we have to make the deals as we are contacting people, as we're going to. And that was supposed to be John Floyd's job. And John Floyd is a bitter alcoholic, and he thought that being a music supervisor for a film just meant I get to pick songs. So he gave us a list of 200 songs that had to be in the movie.
How long of a movie did he think it was going to be?
I don't know. But over and over, I explained to him, we can't do this. We can't do it like that. And also, and so the music rights in a film are very complicated, stupidly so. It's a bad system that has evolved to benefit all the worst people, and not the artists.
Yeah, not the filmmakers,
not the filmmakers.
Musicians.
No, none of them. No.
Yeah.
So me and John Floyd at one point had a falling out that was pretty awful, and I won't get into it.
I knew he had left the project towards the end.
Yeah. I won't go into all the details of that, but it was really bad. And so we was just us to carry on at the end there, and we weren't speaking anymore. We were speaking through Ross, and when we locked picture, we had the list of the songs that were in the film, and I had finalized that list through, and of course, and just let me, as a side thing, John Floyd would get angry when we would cut a song from his list, but we didn't have film of anybody doing the song, so we couldn't put it in the movie, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to put in REM demos. And it's like, and we actually talked to the REM people about those demos, and they were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, we can't just stick that demo in and try to skate by, because that's fucking Warner Brothers. They will burn us to the ground and not notice that they did it.
They eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
Right, yeah. And I'll tell you one thing I've learned is that they will not work with you. They will not. You go, I'm a low budget, we're a tiny little.
They got one
thing.
price.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about you at all. So when we locked picture, we sent it to SoundMix, and I sent word to John through Ross and Steve, and I was like, here's what made the final cut, and where are we at? And he was like, I haven't done anything. And this is 2.5 years. He hadn't talked to anybody. He hadn't contacted me. He hadn't done nothing. So, and we didn't have any money. And we had raised some money through Kickstarter, and the amount of money that we needed was about 10 times more than we raised in Kickstarter. So I didn't want to go back to Kickstarter and beg for the music rights, because also I figured we'd be cannibalizing our audience. So we'd be asking people to pay to finish the film and then ask them to pay to see the film too. So I didn't want to do that. And also it's a lot of money, but it's not a prohibitive amount of money, and it's an amount of money that one person could write a check for, and if they were the right person. And
if anyone's listening,
yeah, call me. And so we go to the
I can tell you're getting a little worked up just recounting this.
Well, I'm trying to stay calm. But so we get to the premiere, and we went into Memphis. We had a really great festival run. At that point, I was like, here, I got festival rights, quote unquote, from people, which is not really a legal thing. It's don't sue me. I'm going to take this around to festivals and then see if I can find
a real investor,
because it's like, okay, you think about it, it's a bad pitch. Okay. And it doesn't seem like a bad pitch to us because we know what it is, but you take it to somebody and they're like, I have this movie it's going to teach people about all this great music that they missed, but it is great. And that is an entire city's worth of punk, new wave, alternative music for 15 years. And not just any city, Memphis, one of the greatest musical cities on the planet. And what producers hear is, oh, you're making a movie about music nobody knows about, so I'm not going to be able to sell this movie because nobody knows about it.
You'd especially think in a climate where, I mean, there are, similar punk rock scene documentaries out about Chicago.
Yep.
Some of my former
the
coworkers.
930 Club in D.C. has one.
Little Rock has one.
Little Rock has one. We talked to those guys.
Memphis is almost, the whole first part of the Little Rock punk rock documentary covers the connection between Memphis and Little Rock.
Yeah, we got some footage from them.
Yeah.
So
they talk about Metro Waste a good bit in that one.
Right.
They talk about several noteworthy Memphis punk bands.
Yeah. So I went around. We had a really good festival run. We won a bunch of awards. I had literally at the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival, I had this dude walk up right after the film was over. Said, I'm a buyer for BBC, Dutch public television, German public television, and I've got like people in Italy and all over Europe.
Yeah, seems like the perfect.
Right, because they love, folks might not know this, but Europeans love Memphis music more than Memphians do.
Oh yeah.
Lorette Velvet told us that they would play in Memphis and they would play the Antenna and nobody would show up, and then they would go to Europe and they would be literal rock stars in Europe. But it still is to this day. It's still like that, and so I was like, that's perfect for us. He's like, I know. It's like, it was an amazing movie. I loved it. He was like, this is perfect. I want to buy it. What's your music rights situation? And I said, well, we're working on it. And he turned around and walked off. So that what distributors want is an insurance bond, an errors and omissions insurance bond, which says if somebody comes and tries to sue us, then it's on you and the insurance company's going to get it. And they won't work with you. They won't give you any money ahead of time, nothing. And especially for a project like this.
Wow. Crazy.
It's crazy.
That dude just turned around.
And it happened.
I can picture that moment.
Oh, yeah.
Having been at a few South by Southwests and had a few of those post-set conversations with the guy with the business card.
Yeah.
I can almost picture the exact scene and the dude just ghosting you
just
mid-conversation.
Yeah, just walked off.
Yeah. Listen to the full conversation at backtothelight.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.